Thank you again. Such powerful experiences to share. I truly feel that we've been on sacred ground here with those who have shared such painful experiences. And thank you again to share with such courage and openness. And again, what we're talking about here is the connection between such an unimaginable and deep pain and how that affects individuals in their own personal mental health. And what wasn't shared specifically is even their own risks of suicidal thought from their own deep pain. So again, and I have to say, these are my heroes, really. And not just heroes to me, but more than anything, I view them as heroic in their own life story, where they have chosen the courage to heal and become heroes and heroines in their own life story. And I always love to see those examples and how inspiring they are to me, that such deep pain can be addressed and worked through. And as you heard here, that pain never fully goes away, and how we treat that pain. And really, when it comes to suicide, it's an issue of pain, not really about death. It's an issue of pain. And so we all can comprehend, since all of us are a little older here, each of us can understand and comprehend deep pain. And so the courage to heal is what's so inspiring to us. So thank you again. Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you. And so we turn to our next section here on our summit. And again, thank you to those of you who are joining us virtually, again, sharing with your time with us. And again, going back to Pastor Vanetta's prayer to begin with about how we're a community. And so we have really a moral and even covenantal obligation to build a community together. And so our theme this year, again, is addressing suicide through faith, hope, and love. And so that togetherness and this summit over these years has been such a powerful experience for us as faith leaders to come together from different faiths to address this issue. And so our next presentations will begin with Richard Ostler, who will talk about building a community of belonging and inclusiveness. And one of the suicidologists out there, part of his theory of suicide is that this concept or problem or challenge of thwarted belongingness is what he talks about. In other words, being disconnected and how that leads to a risk of suicide. And so Richard Ostler will talk about building what we can do to help build connection. And then following Richard, we'll have another great friend and colleague, Kathy Cipriano, who really is a treasure in our own community in teaching and ministering. I refer to her as having her own personal ministry of grief and how to build a compassionate community in responding to grief and for those who have lost someone to suicide. And so we look forward to those comments on how we can work to develop a more compassionate community. And then following Kathy, then another great friend and colleague, Pastor Logan Wolf, and he's been championing the suicide prevention effort for years from the beginning of our summits. And he will be talking to us and teaching us how we can build a responsive and a resilient community. And so I'll turn the time over to Richard, and then we'll look forward to learning from you. Thank you, Richard.
panel was priceless. There were so many golden nuggets in that panel. I want to watch that again. Let me just kind of test my slides out here. There's my email in case anybody wants a copy of this presentation. This is a presentation I give in LDS congregations. It's about a 40-minute presentation, but I'm going to do this version in about 20 minutes. That's our family. My wife and I are the parents of 6 children and 3 grandchildren. And I'm going to talk particularly about the LGBTQ space. Erica Munson is here, who's been one of my mentors as I've been trying to understand this space and do a good job. But I didn't come at this from the perspective of a parent with an LGBTQ child. Just I'll talk a little bit about how I stepped in this space, and it really came as a Latter-day Saint YSA bishop. And it was the first time that I had priesthood responsibility, ministering responsibility for an LGBTQ Latter-day Saint. And it was a kind of a 180 degree for me. I finally got an impression from Heavenly Father to wipe my hard drive clean, to use a computer term, of everything I'd picked up about this community. I probably had a lot of misinformation and I didn't know where to start. So Heavenly Father just said, wipe your hard drive clean, start from scratch and listen to LGBTQ people and their parents. And then you'll see this group of people, how I see them. And that was really important for me. And I just realized I had a lot of misconceptions. I'm 60, so I was in my mid 50s at that point. And I just have about 9 slides. This slide is really important to me. It's a slide from Dr. Brene Brown, a social scientist. I don't want to fall off the stage here. That would be bad. I'd probably break bones at my age. Common enemy intimacy is the opposite of true belonging. If the bond we share is simply we hate the same people, the intimacy we experience is intense, immediately gratifying, and an easy way to discharge our outrage and pain. It's not however, fuel for real connection. So at times in our faith communities and our political parties and our circles, we create these enemies and we create great connection within our community with these enemies. And I have been guilty of this with the LGBT community. I had saw them as this outside group of people that somehow posed a threat to me and my family. And some of the religious narrative that I grew up with was couched in that context. But then when you have an LGBTQ family member or you have ministering responsibility, pastoral responsibility, my paradigm shifted and I recognized that I need to create messaging that is more healthy. So the message of this is if I create intimacy just because we hate the same people, that does create legitimate connection, but it just creates anxiety and stress and some of the things we heard in our first connection. And I realized that my faith can stand on its own merits. It doesn't need a bogeyman. It doesn't need a villain. We create villains so much in society of the other political party or the other group or the other. And to me, a higher, holier way is just to stand on our own merits and not to create a villain in society. We can have a fact-based discussion about different people, different political platforms, different feelings, but to get the emotion out of it, I think creates a lot healthier approach and a lot higher, holier way that I think our God wants us to live. Let's go forward. When I was stepping into this space while I was still a singles ward bishop, I was trying to reprogram my hard drive and I started to reach out to LDS parents that had gay children and would follow them on social media. And this is a social media post that's pretty sobering. And after the last panel, I recognize many of you know this road well. Lark, in fact, has been on our podcast and has done such a good job. But this Instagram is the happiest place in the world. We post our very best moments there. But Allison Paul posted the day after her son died by suicide. She put his picture up there on Instagram. And you can read that. Yesterday, I lost my beautiful son to suicide. He was a young man with so much to give. My son is gay. He was a square peg trying to fill a round hole and suffered immensely. We can do better recognizing differences and loving others unconditionally. My challenge to you is to choose love. That just really deeply impacted me. I felt an impression to step in this space once my church assignment was ending and just be a voice of trying to be more understanding. And so that's led to written a book. I've written a book called Listen, Learn, and Love, which is really the process I continue to take. I learned some stuff today. but I had to be willing to listen, a skill that men in particular my age aren't very good at. I had to be willing to learn, and then I could better love. And so that's the process I've gone through, and that's the process of our platform. And I started a podcast, just a labor of love. You can't donate, just do it in my home, but just share stories, because stories is what changed my heart. And the power of that last panel is transformative. And so we just have a platform where people come and share their stories. And I try not to do much talking. You can see some of the topics, including suicide, that we've talked quite a bit about on the podcast. And Lark has been on the podcast, and maybe some of you others. This is a really important slide to me. Fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming something you need to be in order to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. So if you're not straight, that has big implications for your place in faith communities in our society. So a lot of the LGBTQ I meet with spent just tons of emotional capital trying to be that round peg. Everybody wants to be a round peg. That's sort of the heteronormative part of society. And look at the holes on that pegboard. You see any square holes? There's all round holes, at least in this pegboard. So if you're a round hole, there's lots of places for you to fit in. You don't have to be different, and you can fit in. But look at that single square peg. That could represent an LGBTQ person or someone that just doesn't fit in. Look at the stresses on the side of that square peg as that person is trying to fit in. And it's causing a lot of stress on the side of that. So what do? We try to create, in the past, in my faith, we even believed, and a lot of society taught this, that somebody that's LGBTQ caused that and can do something to sort of uncause that or become a round peg again. And now my faith community doesn't teach that. And that has real important implications. It takes the responsibility off an LGBTQ person to somehow be straight, and it puts the responsibility on us to create a feeling of belonging. And then it's our job to create in our culture, in our families, in our faith communities, square holes so people can feel like they belong. That's really an important principle for me. It doesn't, to me, change the doctrine of my faith, but it creates, as Travis introduced, a feeling of belonging. I have picked up on this word in the circles I'm in, that the need to belong, and I'm once again not clinically trained, but just in my heart is something that is so core to us as humans, the need to belong. And for LGBTQ people coming out and finding people accept this part about themselves and love them can be so healing and helpful for them. And then they can fully feel like people accept them for who they are, and they can feel a tremendous feeling of belonging. So people come out, and more people come out now than ever before because they feel safe and they're hearing better messages about people like them. Now I'm going the wrong way again in my short presentation. This is a slide that really helped me understand particularly how an LGBTQ person may feel. And it's called the idea of not belonging or isolation is the most terrifying and destructive feeling a person can experience. It's not the same as being alone. It's the feeling that one is locked out of the possibility of human connection and powerless to change the situation. So I'll stop there. And as I meet with LGBTQ people, that is how many feel. A gay 18-year-old young man or young woman thinking, this isn't about being alone. This is about locked out of the ability to have human connection. If I want to follow, if I want to live the teachings of my church and be alone for the rest of my life. And that can be pretty overwhelming to a young person. And so then I'll pick up the quote here. In the extreme, physiological isolation can lead to a sense of hopelessness and desperation. People will do almost anything to escape the combination of condemned isolation and powerlessness. So what do? We do what this panel did. We just sit with people in the complexity of their situation, and we listen, and we validate pain, And if their pain comes from our faith communities, I've learned I can validate pain in an individual and still support my faith community. It's not binary. It can be deeply healing and helpful for someone in a faith community to acknowledge pain that comes from that faith community. And to me, that's a road to healing, is to just acknowledge the complexities of their life, sit with them in their pain and the difficulty. And often as a fix-it guy, which I naturally am, I want to fix things. But I've learned as I've kind of matured to try not to always fix things and just often sit with people. I've also learned, back to this common intimacy slide, is that we have 6 kids and we're not perfect parents, but we tried to create a culture that our kids will open up to us. And those of you that lost a child to suicide, I don't want to have you feel you could have done anything different. But often we have a culture in our families and our faith communities that talks negatively of other people. People that have left our faith, we sometimes not talk negatively. People that aren't following the teachings of our faith, people that are in different faiths, people in different political parties. And that can create a culture in our families that it's not safe for children to open up about the realities of their life because their parents are often talking negatively about people. And I feel so strongly that if we can create a culture in our faith, if we're faith leaders, that we're talking just like this beautiful group is. I love that there's multiple faiths here and we're seeing the good in all of humanity. If we can do that, then I think we become safer as faith leaders and as parents if our kids and people in our congregations are consistently hearing us talk about all of Heavenly Father's children in positive ways, which is the way that I think faith leaders around the world do, and great faith leaders throughout history have done. I think that's a really important principle. I think another thing that happens sometimes in our faith communities, and I'm watching my time, is what I could call sort of this toxic perfectionism, this checklist culture that creates this ideal or this perfect, and there's a lot of pressure. And I think sometimes we go to church or our faith communities and we kind of have to present this outward feeling of who we're supposed to be to fit in or belong to our faith community. And it doesn't allow us to be authentic with the realities of our lives. And if we're feeling suicidal or we're LGBTQ, or we have questions about our faith, or I think sometimes that culture can create it very difficult for us. One of the things that was fascinating for me is the last year being a YSA bishop, that's just a leader of a local congregation, on social media, I started to say kind things about gay people. And it's a long story why I got into social media at kind of an old age. What happened was fascinating to me. No more gay people came out to me, but straight people said, okay, I can talk to this guy. I've never talked to anybody about this before, but I know I can talk to this guy about this part of my life. Doesn't mean I had the tools to solve it, but I just was what we all want to be, a safe person, so that people can open up and we can walk with them on the road and get them connected to many of you that have the clinical expertise that truly help them. What an important principle for those of you that follow the life of Jesus. I think that's what he did all the time. I call it table fellowship. He invited everybody to his table so they all felt welcome. People in society felt that he shouldn't be inviting. One of the things I want to mention about the LGBT people I meet with, and I've met with hundreds and I've given them blessings, most come to the feeling that this part about them is how they're meant to be created, that something didn't go wrong, they're not a mistake. It puts them on the same moral footing as straight people. They can look in the mirror and say, this is who I am, this is who I'm meant to be. And that helps them reduce the shame and connect with their God. It's really helpful, and that's one of the most important principles I can help with LGBT people is connect with your God and develop a personal relationship. Sometimes we've said this in my own faith community that everybody will be straight in the next life. Now, I have a lot of conversations with LGBTQ people, and some do want to be straight in the next life. It's kind of a hard road. But some come to the point that this part about them is part of their very essence, and they don't want to have this change in the next life. And so I think you can listen to people and find their individual feelings. It does increase the risk of suicide if we teach that everybody's going to be straight in the next life, because that is, for some, the final ace in the hole to be straight, is to die by suicide. So I just bring that up, the nuance of this space. I had probably said that in a church meeting that everybody be straight in the next life. I just am sensitive to saying anything that would cause somebody to be more likely to choose suicide in any context. I hope that's okay to talk about that. You can see my pattern here going the wrong way. That's really the end of my presentation. I just honor Stockton. Everything I do, the profits to the book I wrote, it's called Listen, Learn, and Love, Embracing LGBTQ Latter-day Saints. It's at Desert Book. It's at Amazon. All the proceeds go to his Memorial Foundation. I'm in this space to honor him and to reduce suicide, particularly with LGBTQ youth. They need our love. Some of the phrases we can improve on, we could say instead of love this, we don't love the sinner. Well, I can't even say it right. We love the sinner, hate the sin. Just say we love people. There doesn't need to be any condition on that. We're all sinners. And I think we can just say we love people because they deserve to be loved, not because our love will accomplish some goal that we have for them, some agenda. Let's just love people because they deserve to be loved, not because our love will rescue them or bring them into our faith or keep them in our faith. Let's just love people because they deserve to be loved and keep our families together, keep our congregations together. Congregations should be a safe place for everybody. There should be no belief or behavior hurdle to feel welcome in a congregation. So those are my closing thoughts, and just act on the impressions you feel today. There's been wonderful content so far. You'll continue to feel content, hear content, but just, you don't need to write a book or start a podcast to be helpful. You can just, in your circle of influence, words matter, just do a little bit better to bring more understanding and bring us together. And thank you for the chance to present.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Kathy Supiano. I am committed to keeping us on time. I'm going to give you 1 minute, 1/2 minute. Stand up, turn around, and sit down again. All right, you're done. Sit down. Seriously, I expect you to wake up a little bit. You are now in your post-sugar slump, and you're going to have a little work to do here today. So I'm a psychotherapist and a scientist, and really privileged to join you in this very compassionate space that Travis, Benet, so many of you have created for me. We're going to talk about suicide in the context of creating compassion around it. We have to think beyond the numbers, and so we need to think about this. Our care needs to be directed to those who are considering taking their lives, those who have died by suicide. We've talked about grace here today. I'm grateful for that. We need to bring compassion to those who attempt suicide, those who survive these suicide attempts, and my own area of work with those who are bereaved by suicide. We need the numbers to help us to plan, to predict, to prevent, and to provide care, but there are human beings behind these numbers. It's difficult to determine how many people have actually been impacted by suicide, but those of us in the prevention and postvention area remember when we were taught 6 people were affected by every suicide, and there's been great science that has refuted that number. And we know that on average, and this is conservative, I remind you, we're in a state with very big families. I'm Lutheran, but I see that. There are 32 people at least that are impacted by suicide. Every day, 3,700 plus people become survivors of suicide. Let that sink in for a moment. This year, and thank you all for wearing your masks, that's a sign of compassion. But we know we have incredibly heightened mental health consequences because of the social isolation, just one factor of the pandemic. Just think about 31% of unpaid caregivers, 22% of essential workers. Look at this racial distribution of people this year who have entertained ending their own lives. Just to remind you, we're in a pandemic in case you forgot. And where we are is we wished we were in the area of Reconstruction. We are still heavily in the area of mask wars, anti-vaxxer, vaxxer controversy, and disillusionment. We all need more grace at the table. There's a risk here, and there's always a risk. And I've told so many of you that the choice in grief ultimately is between compassion, between grace, and bitterness. It was wonderful to see this panel. Some of you I know who have actively chosen grace and compassion. So in this space, I encourage you to remain soft. And this is how we create compassionate communities. Don't let the bitterness of this world, the bitterness of your life experience, the bitterness of your own sorrow, steal your sweetness. You were built for sweetness. So let's look at the numbers. Let's look behind the numbers. Let's look at the people who are suffering in the presence of suicide survivor loss. Let's think about what suffering is. Suffering in an existential framework is a threat to one's selfhood, with the resultant distress, helplessness, which we've spoken about, and the reality that the situation will endure. I'm so grateful for the rabbi's perspective that trauma is not a one and done. It's exponential, it's life-lasting, and it can actually inform the future of joy, Those who lose meaning or are unable to find meaning in suffering can experience profound despair. I want to be very careful here. Finding meaning is not finding the answer. Please say that again. Finding meaning is not finding the answer. All right. We had a wonderful public health presentation. Many of us have been to suicide prevention presentations where we've learned all the risk factors, right? What to watch for, I have been a psychotherapist for 40 years, and I can tell you there is no clinician on this planet, no matter how capable, no matter how sophisticated, who can answer this question: why any one person at any one moment of time got access to any set of means and completed a suicide. We can answer those questions in terms of populations, not in terms of individuals. So finding meaning in that, finding purpose, is not the same thing as saying, okay, God told me why this happened. Just so you know, pastors, priests, and bishops. So what happens? Grief feels like static electricity racing through the head of the griever. It lands in your heart, it lands in your head, it lands in your body. It is enduring. It is not simple and not linear. All right. This is a beautiful picture of a trail in Michigan. I'm from Michigan. In Michigan, people don't hike, they meander. You can go through a nice forest full of pine needles and you're not going to get hurt. This is Utah. If you hike here, you better look at your feet and the horizon at the same time. Grief is like that. Rocky, jagged, painful. You got to do one step and one step and one step. But Lark, Chandra, you look at the horizon. You look at the horizon. So what helps us? These are our marching orders. Talking about it with support of others. Where there's trauma, it's not just talking about it with people who have, dare I say, God made us with 2 ears and 1 mouth, emphasis ears. Healthy coping strategies, and of course that's the opposite of unhealthy coping strategies. Time. Accepting mystery and uncertainty. So when you're making that home visit, do not come with the answers, come with your ears. Realizing that the circumstances of death do not define the person who died. Whether it's your son, whether it's your brother, whoever that person is. When I talked about static electricity around the head, that's all that horrible strain and feeling. Let that calm. This could take a day. This could take a decade. Let this person land in your heart. Watch me. Here, brother, son, in heart, and the circumstances of the death here. Am I pretending it's not a suicide? No, I can see it, but it's not here. It doesn't define him. It's here. And he's here. Eventually choosing gratitude over bitterness. And I don't know about you, but I have to do this every day. So for us, compassion, sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together, and a desire to alleviate it. Any English teachers in the room? Yay! Compassion, root cause, root word, passion. Passion, passion of Jesus, passion on the cross, passion, pain, suffering. Not sexual passion, sorry to disappoint you. Passion, suffering. Compassion, co-suffering. Will we be courageous enough to suffer with others? Not for them, we can't do that work, but to suffer with others. And why does this matter in suicide bereavement? Compassion constitutes a radical form of criticism of our social forces that are destructive. Criticism, because it announces that this hurt is to be taken seriously. It is not to be accepted as normal or natural, but as unacceptable. People should not suffer for the reality of losing someone to suicide in ways that are different than losing someone to a motor vehicle accident or losing someone to cancer. We should not burden people with this stigma. We need to bring grace to this experience. So I was asked to speak about compassionate communities. This is an international movement. It's the Compassionate Communities movement. It challenges this idea that we can't talk about death. We can't talk about suffering. We can't talk about grief, but it teaches us a language of kindness and acceptance so that we can join people in these painful places in ways that are loving, just simply in ways that are loving. So a compassionate community has collectively the capacity to process and bring knowledge to loss. It has a knowledge that can facilitate understanding and invite reflection, enable actions from casseroles to driving, to listening, to bringing care. It recognizes our interdependence with each other as co-journeyers on this amazing planet. So now your homework. Everyone pay attention, keep your mask on. I'm the only one free at the moment not to have a mask on. You're going to read this out loud to me, and I'm going to lead, but let's read this out loud. I'm very ugly. So don't try to convince me that I'm a beautiful person, because at the end of the day, I hate myself in every single way. And I'm not going to lie to myself louder by saying there is beauty inside me that matters. So rest assured, I will remind myself that I am a worthless, terrible person, and nothing you say will make me believe I still deserve love. Because no matter what, I'm not good enough to be loved, and I am in no position to believe that beauty does exist within me. Because whenever I look in the mirror, I always think, am I as ugly as people say? Isn't that horrible? Isn't that painful? When you were a 14-year-old, didn't you think this was true? Didn't you think this was true for you? Maybe for now and then, maybe a glimmer. Do you want to know what therapy is? I'm a psychotherapist. Want to know what therapy is? Therapy is turning that inside out. Turning that inside out. So let me tell you something. We're all going to turn this inside out together. So what you're going to do with me now is read this from the bottom up. Am I as ugly as people say? Because whenever I look in the mirror, I always think beauty does exist within me. And I'm in no position to believe that I'm not good enough to be loved, because no matter what, louder, I still deserve love. And nothing you say will make me believe that I'm a worthless, terrible person. So rest assured, I will remind myself there's beauty inside me that matters. And I'm not going to lie to myself by saying I hate myself in every single way, because at the end of the day, I'm a beautiful person. So don't try to convince me I'm very ugly. I wish I wrote that, but I'm proud to share it with you. So that's what psychotherapy is. If you've never gone to therapy, psychotherapy is taking negative self-appraisal and turning it upside down and finding the joyful person within. But you don't need a psychotherapist to do that. You need a friend, you need a sister, you need a neighbor, you need a pastor, you need a bishop, you need somebody who doesn't have the answers to just say, you know it sucks. I can't imagine how it sucks inside your life, but I'm not abandoning you. And that's how we turn it inside out. But for us, this from Rabbi Rachel Naomi Remen. The expectation that we, us, can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. Loving people hurts. It's costly, it's burdensome, they're pesky, they're annoying, and very often they smell, especially if you're raising teenage boys. Done it. But we have to be willing to be wet. What we have to do if we're going to be caregivers in the faith community and be wet, got to put on our galoshes, we got to have an umbrella, and we've got to wear our rain slickers, but we got to go through that river. What's our umbrella? Our faith tradition. What's our raincoat? Our each other. What are our galoshes? You figure out your own galoshes. Coping skills, your own meditation and spiritual practices. But we've got to be willing to get wet. So to that end, compassion and self-compassion actually go together a lot. So as much as I challenge you to care for people in your community who are suffering, you have no credibility if you don't take care of yourself first. All right? So whatever you do, be gentle with yourself. And if I can take away one burden off your shoulders today, you don't have to have the answers. Send people to us. You don't have to have the answers, but you cannot walk away from this. You just can't walk away. Now from Fred Rogers, another faith leader. Many people don't know Mr. Rogers was a Methodist pastor, Presbyterian, Methodist. See, Lutherans should know those. Sorry. We live in a world in which we need to share responsibility. It's easy to say, it's not my child, not my community, not my world, not my problem. Then there are those who see the need and respond. That is you. That is us. I call these people my heroes. So thank you. We've got my contact information there. We've been gifted with the state of Utah with funds to do suicide grief training. We can talk about that another day, but my charge to all of you is keep on loving. Thank you.
I do not have much more to say that has not already been said. And in light of what, at least to me, has been a very powerful day, I am going to jettison the bulk of my notes and go in a different direction as we wrap up. I am a pastor. I'm a church planter. I live down in Provo, Utah. I've been here for 10 years. And 5 years ago, I read an article in the Daily Herald that said suicide is the leading cause of death for Utah children ages 7 to 11. What was it? 11 to 17. I did write that down here. 11 to 17. That blew my mind. I didn't know how to process that. And so I'd read this article, and then I had to basically grapple with, does my faith even provide me with a framework to deal with that reality? So a lot of reflection and a lot of introspection. The world is a broken place. And this is a deep, heart level type brokenness. And we see it all around us, right? We see it in nature with sickness and decay and death. And we see it in our societies, war and injustice and exploitation. We see it in our relationships with dishonesty and selfishness, infidelity. And we experience it personally, heartache and loneliness and fear, as well as the things we've been talking about today with depression and addiction and suicidal ideation. And none of those things are okay. None of those things were part of the plan or part of the design. None of those things are okay. God's not smiling on those things. And all of those things are symptomatic of that deep heart level brokenness. And you know this, we deal with the brokenness and the stresses and the hurts and the pain in our lives in a bunch of different ways. And some of those things need confronted head on. But they're symptomatic of a deeper set brokenness. And the only one that can even touch the brokenness of the human heart is God. And he's done that. Brokenness has been confronted. He's done that through his son, Jesus Christ. Someone has come into the brokenness willingly, into our mess and into our heartache and into our suffering, and then live this life that we could never live perfectly. And then takes all that on himself, pays for it with his own blood, his own death, and then walks out of the grave just victorious over it. And now he invites everyone to come out of it, to come into wholeness, to come into life, and to experience his love and his presence right now by simply trusting that what he's done is enough. And what happens is these broken, distorted hearts of men and women are made whole. And they're not the same anymore. They're new. And then he sends them out in his name and in his authority into this broken world to bring wholeness to all of those symptoms, the hurt and the fear and the injustice and the loneliness and the exploitation to correct it. Now, I say all of that to say this. When I read that statistic, and I'm grappling with how it fits into my faith, I was reminded again that a faith that does not lead you to confront brokenness when you're made aware of it is no real faith at all. And so essentially, God was saying to me, Logan, I've shown you something you were unaware of. You're aware of it now. Are you going to do anything about it? And I think that's where we need to leave off today, was wrestling with that question. Maybe you've come in here today and someone invited you, or you got the email or whatever, and you had no idea of what to expect. Maybe this is a brand new topic for you, but you've been here and you've heard the research and the numbers and the speakers and the panel and the lived experience. And this was all brand new to you, but now you're aware of something that you may not have been aware of. God is essentially saying, hey, do you see this right here in front of you? This is your community. This is your city. This is your church. This is your street. Do you see this? There's not a single person in this room that can say, no, I have. We've all seen it today, right? And so the question we have to grapple with now is, are we willing to step out and bring wholeness to this hurt? To do something within our sphere of influence to impact those around us who are hurting. So we want to have you think about that over the next minute. I will do this part that I was asked to do. And we want to have you communicate an action step, a takeaway from today. So if you're watching online, there's of course the chat option. At the tables, there's notepads. But we would like everyone just to take a minute and to say, in light of what I've learned today, in light of the resources that I've picked up, in light of the stories that I've heard, here is one concrete, specific thing I am going to do as a result. So let's just take a minute at the tables and do that. Again, in the chat, online, and do that. After you write yours down, by all means, turn to the people at your table and say, here, there's some accountability in it. Say, here's what I'm going to do in light of our time together this afternoon. I'm going to hand this back over to Travis. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry I deviated, but I'm going to.
Logan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Perhaps you can see why I love Logan. Love his passion, I love his faith, and I love his heart. And he truly is and has been a champion of this effort with us, really from the beginning. Thank you, Pastor Logan. We have set out to share some information with you that would help you, in a sense, get you started in a direction or further your direction in the suicide prevention effort and the suicide healing effort. And so we know that our program this year was a little more abbreviated. Normally in the past, we have had breakout sessions where each of these kinds of presentations were 45, 50 minutes and allowed for more dialogue and participation and questions. But we knew that this year was going to be a little bit different. We're grateful that we were able to have some in person. And so we're excited to see those of you who could attend. We have have had over 200 participants online listening in virtually. Thank you for giving us of your time as well. And so we also want to thank those who've helped us with the technology. This year seems to have been much more smooth than before. Lexicon and Blue Nova, thank you. And so again, these presentations, and we have to thank each one, Dr. Crandall, and then our panel, Rabbi Zippel, Deandra, and Lark, and I know Shayla had to leave. Again, such powerful voices of rising above deep pain. And then again, Richard, thank you so much for sharing your message on building inclusive communities and belonging. And again, our hope is that no matter how someone may feel that they don't belong, whether it's race or sexual orientation, or struggling with an addiction, or mental illness, or some other condition, our charge, our task is to help everyone feel that they belong. And thank you for that message, Richard, and also Kathy and Compassionate Communities. Wasn't that a powerful experience to read that from forward and then backward? And so that's a new tool that I'm using with clients. Thank you, Kathy, for sharing that. And then Pastor Logan, what a great testimony to this work and why it's so important. And so again, in a sense, to kind of whet your appetites for what you can do, there are trainings that are available. And so thank you to Carol Riddell and Brianne Silcox, who just got married, and I don't know her last name, new last name, and Benet Larson. We've been providing some QPR trainings. QPR stands for Question, Persuade, Refer. And that is a very effective and research-based, evidence-based training for suicide prevention. And so we've been providing some of these trainings for faith leaders in the LDS Church. And we've had some feedback that these leaders have been able to save lives because of the training that they've received. And so any of you are welcome to sign up to do these trainings with us, and anywhere from across the state, whether it's your local coalition or with us, feel free to contact us, any one of us, and we can schedule some trainings to help you get more boots on the ground information for things you can do for suicide prevention. And the coalition, I just want to point out, is this is the face of the Utah State Suicide Prevention Coalition, is the Live On campaign. And so you've seen billboards around. And so, no, my name isn't Live On, but Boncom, who has created this campaign for us, has their design is that each one can write on their own personal message of living on. And so it's fun to see others who will take this and personalize the message of living on and choosing to stay. And so please feel free to utilize the resources that are at the tables. And thank you to those who've set up the tables and manned them. Thank you for getting the food and all the facilities. Thank you. And so again, feel free to look at our website. The liveonutah.org is a great website with a lot of information. But again, thank you for being here. We appreciate your time, and pray that you might, and back to what Pastor Vanetta shared about our communities, and also Rabbi Zippel's prayer about ministering to our flock and watching over our flock. We hope and pray that you have some tools that can help you minister and reach out to those who are struggling in your own congregations and synagogues. And so to conclude, we have asked Sister Reina Arburto, who is in the Relief Society presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, to offer a concluding prayer. And we've invited her to pray if she were to choose in her native tongue in Spanish. And so if she does, then please feel free. If you don't know Spanish, to just feel the spirit that she carries and brings with her. And so we'll turn the time over to her. And if you have questions, oh, Carol, do you want to? Yes. Thank you. Please do the evaluation that's on your table. There's a way to access that. And for those who are watching online, there's where you can find it. Please share with us how we can maybe strengthen this. Next year, we hope to be all back together, but I think we've learned that to allow for everyone around the state that this is a way that we likely will continue, is to allow in person as well as virtual. So thank you, Sister Alberto.
I appreciate the invitation to pray my native tongue, but I think it's better if we unite our hearts and we all understand the prayer. So thank you. Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads before thee with humility and gratitude this day. We are so grateful for the opportunity and the privilege that we have had to be together today, and for the spirit that we have felt in our hearts. We are grateful for because we have had a change of heart today. We are grateful for everyone who worked so hard to prepare this summit. We know that an event like this takes so much work and love, and we are grateful for those who consecrated their time and energy so we could be strengthened today. We are also very grateful for the ones that spoke today, for the knowledge and the clarity of their thoughts. We are so grateful because through their preparation and their prayers and their love, we have gained a different perspective of what suicide is and how we can help the people who have been affected by it. We are grateful for the ones who have shared their experiences, for their courage, and for the love that they feel for us and for their dear ones. We are so grateful, Father, particularly for thy Son, for his redeeming sacrifice. For the power that we can receive from him as we turn to him, make covenants with him, and try to follow him. We are grateful for his example, for his love, and for the opportunity that we have to be healed by him. We are grateful for everyone who came today and for the ones who are watching remotely, for spending the time here to be able to reflect and learn and be changed. We ask, Father, with humble hearts, to give us the strength that we need to be more compassionate, to be more loving, to have eyes to see and ears to hear what others are going through, to be a source of strength to them so they can feel of thy love and the love of thy Son through us. Please help us, Father, to have the desire to mourn with those that mourn and comfort those who are in need of comfort. Please help us to be instruments in thy hands so we can make our communities a place in which everyone feels that they belong. Also, Father, please help us join our hands, our arms, and our hearts together so we can be more sensitive towards those that are suffering. Please help us to be more mindful of other people and to recognize that we owe Thee everything that we have and that we are. Please help us have the courage to do the things that we have committed in our heart to do. And we pray for Thy blessings, Father. We pray for those who are suffering. Help us see their suffering so they don't have to suffer alone. We love Thee, we love Thy Son, and we are willing to follow Thee and to follow Him so we can become better people. And we say this humbly, Father, praying for Thy blessings with humility and love in the name of Thy Son, our Savior and Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Amen.